1. In step 2, you can see the section of the code list for Japanese, where Okinawan is included. In the top line, Japanese is shown with a range of codes listed, codes 4040 through 4049. This means that all codes in that range are included in the tabulation for Japanese. So in our example of Okinawan, this response would receive the code 4042. However, ultimately, it would be included in the Japanese group. And in step 3, where we have our data table, the Okinawan response is included in the population count for Japanese. So why do we give Okinawan a unique code if we're just going to tabulate it as Japanese? While currently we tabulate Okinawan as Japanese, providing it with its own code allows us to continue to conduct research on the term and see how often people are reporting this term. We will often provide unique codes for groups and tabulate them to a larger group when we start to see more instances of the group being reported. It also keeps the door open to disaggregating the data in the future. Now let's discuss the timeline of this project. There are 4 phases to this research project. The next few slides will provide an update on where we are and next steps. Phase 1 is now completed. This includes internal research only. We are ready for public and stakeholder feedback on our proposed race ethnicity code list. In the initial phase, as shown on the screen, our research team conducted internal research and investigated the results of the 2020 census. They reviewed terms reported for the first time in the 2020 census, in which write-in areas terms were reported, and which checkboxes were selected when terms were reported. The results of this internal research was used to update the 2020 census Hispanic origin and race code list and develop a proposed race ethnicity code list. Currently, we are in the second phase of the project. In phase 2, we published a Federal Register notice yesterday seeking feedback from the public and stakeholders on the proposed race ethnicity code list, and will be conducting related outreach. During phase 3, after we receive all feedback, our race ethnicity research team will carefully review it and develop a summary of all the feedback received. And during phase 4, once all updates resulting from public and stakeholder feedback are implemented, we will continue to make updates as necessary. We'll discuss further in the next few slides. For phase 2, the Census Bureau published a Federal Register notice seeking feedback on the proposed code list yesterday. Please note that the public comment period ends on February 18th, 2025. We are asking you to share the FRN with your stakeholders, and we're seeking feedback on any terms or groups that are missing, how groups are classified, alternative terms for groups on the proposed code list, and the utility of regional groups. This 90-day period will be the primary opportunity this decade to provide feedback on the race ethnicity code list. We know the beginning of 2025 seems early for feedback, but we will need to finalize the code list in order to implement in the 2027 American Community Survey. Getting feedback now ensures that all changes are implemented in time for data collection. As a result, we will not be accepting feedback after the FRN deadline. We plan to conduct tribal consultations and additional outreach during the FRN comment period. In this slide, we share an excerpt of the FRN questions for which the Census Bureau is seeking feedback from the public. First, are there any groups missing from the proposed code list? If so, please identify them and suggest how the groups should be classified and why. Second, are any groups on the proposed code list misclassified? If so, please identify them and suggest an alternative classification or indicate if the term should be removed. Third, are there alternative terms, abbreviations, or in-language terms people may use to identify with a specific group that should be added to the proposed code list? If so, please identify them and suggest a classification. Now, before I get to the last question, the 2020 Census Race Ethnicity Code List was organized into regional categories. For example, Chinese and Japanese aggregated into East Asian. And counts for these regional categories were published in the 2020 Census data products. Based on stakeholder feedback and the challenging nature of categorizing groups into regional categories when the boundaries are not clearly defined, may change over time, or may overlap, the Census Bureau is proposing to remove its definitions and concepts of regional categories so that data users would have more flexibility to create their own regional categories using the disaggregated data. In the FRN, we are asking, how do you use the data produced for regional categories from the 2020 census? And would removing regional categories from the code list and tabulated products impact your ability to use the detailed race ethnicity data? To find out how the Census Bureau classified regional categories for the 2020 census, access the 2020 census race ethnicity code list using the link provided in the FRN. Here we have a screenshot of the proposed race ethnicity code list that you can access via the FRN. I'll now switch over to sharing my screen and show the FRN, the proposed race ethnicity code list, and how to submit a comment. So you should be seeing my Excel sheet, but I will jump back over here to the Federal Register. So again, this is the Federal Register notice. This is what you'll see when you access the Federal Register notice. I'll scroll down, and here you'll see instructions for submitting a comment, but all the way at the bottom, you'll see a link to access the code list. When you click this link, it'll bring you to this landing page. So here you'll see an Excel file, and you'll want to click this file and download the file. It might look different on your browser, but it'll be in your download file. Let me open up the code list. So the proposed race ethnicity code list is an Excel file separated into different tabs located along the bottom. As you see here, we have the README tab, a tab for white, Hispanic or Latino, Black or African American, Asian, AIAN, MENA, NHPI, some other race, ethnicity, and multi-code terms. But I'll go over what this means in a second. So again, as a reminder, the code list reflects the Census Bureau's interpretation of the Office of Management and Budget's SPD 15 definitions. We recommend that you start off at this README tab. This tab provides the definitions of the major reporting categories the Census Bureau is required to use, as well as the description of the proposed multi-code terms list. Here, so you'll also see the full written out names of the ones that are abbreviated along the bottom, the different groups that you see, and you'll also see a written description of how to interpret and understand the contents of this Excel file. Now, Meradith and I have covered much of this information in today's webinar. Further down, you'll also see a link to the random sampling blog with more information. So as we mentioned, the code list reflects the interpretation of the standards. So all of the terms that are listed in each of these tabs, so all the terms listed under the white tab are all classified as white, regardless of the write-in line that they're provided on. Now, I'll show you Hispanic, for example. I'm going to take you down here and show you an example of Costa Rican. So Costa Rican receives the code 2100, and it's located in the Hispanic or Latino tab. And all the terms, again, under the Hispanic or Latino tab are classified as Hispanic, regardless of the write-in line where that response is provided. However, we are currently finalizing our coding procedures, and if you identify terms that are incorrectly classified and you have supporting research, please respond to that FRN and provide a comment. So now what's new for this code list is this multi-code terms tab. Now, the multi-code terms tab includes terms that are classified within two major race ethnicity categories. This tab is largely in response to stakeholder feedback that certain terms should not be located in only one section of the code list. This tab shows the terms that indicate identities that cross major race ethnicity categories. The multi-code terms tab contains three columns. The terms reported column, which lists terms that are classified within two major race ethnicity categories. The classified as column in the middle that shows how terms in the first column will be classified, and the final major categories column, which lists the race ethnicity categories of the given response. You'll notice that there are some terms with a superscript 1 next to them, and others without a superscript 1. Throughout the code list, there are terms that have a superscript 1 next to them. These indicate that along with being in the designated race ethnicity tab, the term is also listed on the multi-code terms tab. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So let's navigate over to the NHPI tab for Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, and let's look at the code 7712 or 7712 for Indo-Fijian. And here you'll see what we mean by that superscript 1 of what you'll be finding. So you'll find that superscript 1 on the cell, and if you click the cell, it'll navigate you back to the multi-code terms tab. Here we find that Indo-Fijian, right here, is classified as Asian and Fijian, and is in the final major categories of Asian and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. So now, what about those terms without the superscript 1? So let's use the example of Afro-Latino. So for the term Afro-Latino, we see that it's classified as Afro and Latino, and it's in the final major categories of Black or African American and Hispanic or Latino. Again, we are currently finalizing our coding procedures, and if you identify terms that are incorrectly classified, including on this multi-code terms tab, and you have supported research, please respond to the FRN and provide a comment. Now, a last-minute tip for navigating through this document. Let's say that you're interested in a specific term and are not sure where it's listed. You can use the Excel search within workbook feature. So if you hit Control F, you'll access the find and replace. And let's say we want to search the term Antiguan. And we're going to search instead of within the sheet, we're going to search within the entire workbook. We're going to hit Find All, and it'll show all the instances where Antiguan is listed on the code list. Here we see Antiguan is in the Black or African American range, and all the examples of Antiguan on the code list, or all instances of Antiguan on the code list, are all here listed below. Now let's walk through how to provide feedback. So let's navigate back to the FRN. So you can click here on the Submit a Public Comment, but you'll also find instructions down here below that guide you to regulations.gov and provide the docket number. So you'll copy over this docket number and go to www.regulations.gov, and you can enter that docket number and hit search. And this is what it'll look like. Then you can hit the comment button, and here you can provide your comment, provide attachments, and fill out all the required information, and then make sure you submit comment at the end. And so again, as a reminder, the public comment period closes February 18th, 2025, and we can get back to the slide deck. Thank you, Allie. So now, for phase 3, throughout the comment period, our research team will thoroughly review all the feedback received. Updates to the code list will be made during this time period. All updates must meet the following criteria. First, that there is strong federal scientific research and evidence to support the update. Second, that stakeholder feedback supports the update. And lastly, that the update aligns with the definition of the minimum reporting categories in SPD 15. Now for phase 4, we plan to make updates to the code list as needed. While this version of the code list is not expected to undergo extensive updates before being implemented in the ACS or 2030 census, it is expected that some updates will continue to be made. For example, we know that the formal names of tribes can frequently change, and we strive to have the most up-to-date names in our code list. For this reason, our code list undergoes frequent updates in the names of tribes to align with the Bureau of Indian Affairs annual FRN. And lastly, as outreach, as always, is an essential part of our work. On the screen is one of our most recent engagements, our current webinar, and upcoming engagements. We will be hosting virtual tribal consultations with tribal leaders on December 11th and January 15th. We also published a random sampling blog yesterday with more information on the proposed code list and the FRN that we encourage you all to check out. Now, this concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll now pass it on to Julie for the Q&A segment.
Thank you, Jessica. As Jessica mentioned, the blog, all of those resources are in our press kit in our newsroom. We'll talk more about that later on in the webinar. We're now ready to begin taking your questions, and joining us now to help answer your questions are 3 other subject matter experts from the Population Division. They are Roberto Ramirez, Assistant Division Chief of Special Population Statistics, Rachel Marks, Senior Advisor on Race and Ethnicity, and Ali Corris, Senior Analyst for the Racial Statistics Branch. And as a reminder, we are only taking questions related to today's webinar, which is the Race Ethnicity Coding Improvement Project. If you have any questions that are out of scope, please contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. We are happy to help. Operator, can you please provide instructions on how people can submit their questions?
Yes, thank you. At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 on your phone. Please ensure that your phone is unmuted and state your name and organization clearly when prompted. Again, that is *1 to ask a question. If you need to withdraw from the queue, press *2. One moment, please.
Thank you, Operator. As we wait for questions to queue up, I'd like to mention the resources for today's webinar. They can all be found on census.gov. Just go to the News tab in the upper right-hand corner, then click on the Press Kit icon. You will find it there. Our press kit includes a link to the new Federal Register notice, a tip sheet, blog, today's slide deck, and we'll add the recording of this webinar when it's available. Okay, now let's go to the questions. Operator, do we have our first caller?
Yes, our first question is from Tim Henderson with State Line. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, Tim.
Yeah, hi. My question is generally, I've been looking at some comments and I see some concern about the Black Hispanic issues and some concerns that race and ethnicity might be conflated somehow. I see some examples you've already discussed, the Afro-Latino option. I see Dominican listed under Black or African American. Are those the kinds of things you're doing to address those concerns, or is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
Jessica Murari, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Dominican is listed on the Hispanic code range. I just wanted to offer that clarification. So we just practice basically what OMB standards dictate on the definition. So an Afro-Latino response is classified as both Black and Hispanic, in that Latino is listed under the Hispanic code range and Afro is a Black or African American term. So when a respondent provides Dominican, on the Black write-in line, that's still coded as Hispanic or Latino. Now, if they provide a Black response in addition to that, that's where we'll be able to capture both aspects of that identity of Black and Hispanic. Rachel or Meredith, I don't know if you have anything else to add. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Operator, do we have our next caller?
Our next caller is Lisa Brown from the University of Woodward. Go ahead, your line's open.
Yes. Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Yes, this is Dr. Lisa Brown from the University in Carnegie, and I have been immersed in this process from the beginning back in November 2019. I think that's when we first started. Nevertheless, my question is similar to the previous caller. We were very adamant about there being a U.S. freedmen descendant category, and that the previous FRN said that they were going to take them under advisement. I am quite shocked that you've done some kind of disaggregating to make sure that the Hispanic Latino was included under Black, but didn't honor the request for those Blacks who were descendants of slaves and freedmen to be included in the coding. Is there still time for us to make that case, even though we submitted several articles, including myself and Dr. Darity at Duke University, about this need to have that specificity and granularity we were promised?
Thank you for your question, Lisa. Rachel, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we appreciate you being involved since 2019. Your feedback is really important to us. And so just for clarification, I think the feedback that you provided previously was through OMB's Federal Register notice on updating the standards that they've recently updated earlier this year. So what we're asking today about is our code list. And while OMB did not make updates to add an American descendants of slaves or American freedmen category, they did, in their updated standards, specifically specify that future research on this topic should be conducted. And so I would absolutely encourage you to send us any research you have about this topic, about further disaggregating it, because as I know you were part of those conversations, there was an agreement during the OMB comment period about which term should be used to identify this population, or if it should be disaggregated from the Black or African American category, or stay within it, or even perhaps be asked through a different question. So we welcome your feedback on this topic, and thanks for your continued engagement.
Okay, thank you. We will be submitting some disaggregation recommendations.
Thank you, Lisa. Operator, do we have our next caller?
Next caller is Rosalind Gold from Nalio Educational Fund. Go ahead, your line's open.
So thank you so much. It's great to hear from everybody. Thank you for your very comprehensive efforts on this. I'm going to try to get away with two questions. So first question is, I want to follow up on this idea of how what a person writes in and how they're coded relates to the minimum categories they are included in. So for example, let's say someone checks off that they are racially Black, but also under that writes in Dominican. Will they continue to be classified as racially Black and then assigned to the Hispanic minimum category? Or let's say someone indicates that they are ethnically Latino but writes in Afro-Latino. Will they be assigned to the African American Black racial category? And the second question is, can we request listening sessions beyond the stakeholder engagements that you're making available?
Thank you for your question. Jessica Marari?
Yep, I can take that. So for a response where the checkbox of Black is checked and a write-in of Dominican, for example, is provided, we have a code on the code list for the Black checkbox. So it would receive the code for Black and the code for Dominican. And in that event, it's coded as both Black or African American and Hispanic. And if they say that your other scenario where they provide a Hispanic checkbox and write in Afro Latino, now because they wrote in that Afro, That'll be coded as both Black and Hispanic. And of course, we're open to continued engagement. Please reach out to our staff and we can set something up.
Thank you so much.
And you can contact the Public Information Office. We're happy to make that connection. And that's pio@census.gov. Thank you so much for your question. Operator, do we have our next caller?
Our next caller is Sandra Schmidt from Data Compliance Services. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, Sandra.
You know, I'm sorry. I thought I just had to do that in case I had a question, but this is also interesting to me, and I'm just listening in and taking notes. I'm actually a Native American who has been involved in data since I was 19 years old, and it's been quite a few years, and it just always amazes me. So this webinar caught my attention, and I wanted to see what it was about. I find it very interesting, though, because with Native Americans, there's so much wrong with even collecting data, period. That's why I've never swayed.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Do you have a question?
No, I'm taking notes. This is all new to me, this part.
We encourage you to log into the Federal Register Notice and provide your feedback. We'd love to hear it. Next caller, please.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Tanya Hernandez from Fordham University. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you very much. A quick follow-up on the Afro-Latino line of questioning. Once someone is coded as both Black and Hispanic, are they counted and reported out as fully Black? That is to say, the old-fashioned Black-only category? Or will they be subsumed into the multiracial, two or more races form of report out?
Thank you for your question, Tanya. Jessica Marari.
I'd also like to get Rachel's feedback on tabulation, since that's part of the OMB standards. But essentially, they would be within the Black and Hispanic count if you have the full list so Black or African American and Hispanic for the full tabulation list, but they would also be in the Black alone or in combination or the Hispanic alone or in combination. And Rachel can speak more about tabulation.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. So the updated OMB standards encourage agencies to produce as much data as possible. And in the past, a lot of agencies have fallen back on producing data for the alone population and then one aggregate multiracial group. But moving forward, agencies are really being encouraged to produce as much detail as possible. So encouraging agencies to produce data about those combinations. So producing data for the Black in combination population, the Hispanic or Latino in combination population, and also beyond that, those specific combinations, as the Census Bureau has done in the past for the redistricting data. And one final thing I'll say is that under the new standards, race and ethnicity are treated co-equally. And so for Afro-Latinos, respondents can report both their Black or African American identity and their Hispanic identity. Or for some Hispanics, they may just produce one, and that's acceptable in the standards, and we will tabulate all of those responses.
Thank you for your question, Tanya. Operator, do we have our next caller?
Next caller is Ricardo from UPR. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, Ricardo.
Hello, everybody. This is Ricardo from UPR. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. All right, great. So I had two questions. I think I'll say one for the public comment. What I really wanted to do was ask about some of the racial combinations that are not included in the multi-code list that probably should be there, probably with superscripts. So I had a question about Black Guyanese and Black Belizeans, and also about white South Africans. How would they be tabulated in the current code list that you have now, and would it make sense to include them in a multi-code tabulation where they have subscripts that would assign them to a specific category? And the other question I had in relation to Afro-Latinos, so if Afro-Latinos are pretty much subsumed into a Black alone and in combination category, they're also going to be included with several other different types of multiple race reporting categories that include the Black option and whatnot. And so I'm still trying to visualize how that is going to be tabulated across different agencies and how we can go about using that data to distinguish the material outcomes of Black Latinos from other groups. So I'll save the rest of public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica, Marari, Rachel?
Yeah, I can answer about any terms that you see that are missing on that multi-code terms tab. That's the kind of stuff that we would want in a public comment, so that we want that feedback. We would also want some research that supports that change. And again, it would need to align with the standards. So please provide that feedback and we can look into whether or not that would be something that we can do for the code list. And Rachel, you can take the tabulation question.
Yeah, so as far as tabulation goes, I can't speak for other agencies, but what the standards do encourage is reporting as much detail as possible. So reporting whether a respondent is Black and Hispanic or Latino, or Black and Asian, or Black and white, all of those combinations, as much detail as that data collection will allow. So I would encourage you to reach out to other data collections and see what they're thinking about for their tabulation, then encourage them to report these data if that's something that's useful to you. As far as Census goes, we have reported these types of combinations in the past and will continue to do so.
Thank you so much for your question. As we wait for the next questions to queue up, I'd like to note a few of our upcoming major releases. On December 5th, we'll release the geographic area statistics as part of the 2022 economic census. These data will provide detailed industry statistics by geographic areas for employer businesses in the U.S. This includes states, counties, metropolitan, and micropolitan statistical areas. On December 10th, embargo access begins for the American Community Survey 5-year estimates. For information on how credentialed media can get access, please visit the newsroom on census.gov. The public release for the ACS 5-year estimates will be on December 12th. And on December 19th, we'll release the vintage 2024 population estimates for the nation and states, Puerto Rico, components of change in voting age population. Also on December 19th, we'll release data for Puerto Rico from the 2022 economic census of island areas. These data will provide detailed industry statistics for employer businesses in the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico by geographic area. This includes municipios, metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas, and planning regions. Be sure to subscribe to our newsroom to learn more about these releases or visit the newsroom on census.gov. Operator, do we have any more callers?
Yes, our next caller is Alex from USDA. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hello. So I have a comment and a question. So first, the comment is something we've discussed internally at our agency, has been that same kind of concerns about the desegregation of the African American Black population and recognizing those historical dichotomies. So my specific question was to the point of enhancing the amount of data that's available, going to the example of Hispanic populations. Sort of just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, if somebody indicates that they're, say, Cuban, but they don't put anything else, they just mark that they're Cuban, is the implication going to be that we would define them as Hispanic, that they'd be rolled up as Hispanic, even though there is a possibility, right, with Cubans that they could be Afro-Cuban, but just marking as Cuban means that they're going to be grouped together with Hispanics more broadly, and we wouldn't have that more racial combination data potentially if they just marked Cuban, for example.
Thank you for your question. Marari, would you like to take this one?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your question. And the way that you're interpreting it is correct. So as of right now, as a person in this new combined question and under the new standards, if a person were to provide a response where they only were to write in or check Cuban, they will be tabulated as Hispanic and their detailed response will be Cuban.
Rachel, I don't know if you want to add a little bit more about tabulation and how that's explained in the new SPD 15 as well.
Well, I was just going to add too that, what we're talking about today, these are procedures that we've used for our editing and coding, and we're seeking feedback on our coding, but also we still are working to finalize our editing, and these procedures are the procedures that are specific to the Census Bureau. So I understand you're calling from, I think you said USDA, so these are Census Bureau specific procedures. But like Maurice was saying, what we do at Census is that if someone reports a response as Cuban, whether through a checkbox or a write-in response, regardless of where that's reported, we do aggregate that up to the larger Hispanic or Latino category.
Thank you for your question. Operator, do we have our next caller?
Yes, our next caller is Julianne Fan from Latino Policy Group. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, Julianne.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I was just wondering, we've talked about this within our group too, but I was wondering if you could give some more detail about how you code Indigenous Latinos.
Thank you for your question. Maurice, Jessica?
Yeah, so this one I'm going to try to say a little bit better, and then I will let Rachel as well add a little bit more context in regards to the new revised standards. So if a respondent were to provide a response of, for example, Mayan under the AIN write-in line, this person does get, and you will see this in the code list that we have provided as our proposed one, where right now they will be coded under the American Indian and Alaska Native. And Jessica, do you want to add a little bit more in regards to the rest of the edit? And then Rachel, I will let you add a little bit more in regards to these standards themselves.
So you should be able to see a lot of those in Indian combination terms on that multi-code terms list. If you look through, you'll see how we classify responses of Chilean Indian, Colombian Indian, etc., and how they are crossing across code ranges. So we recognize that, and we include responses of American Indian and Alaska Native and Hispanic or Latino when we go to the final major categories column there. So it's again, we really recommend that you look through, and if you see anything that's miscoded or you would like to provide feedback on how we code things, please send us a public comment. Please provide research if you have any available. That's the kind of feedback that we're looking for.
Thank you so much for your question. Operator, do we have our next caller?
Our next caller is Leslie Richards from American Sociology Associates. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, Leslie.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm wondering, as this is self-report data, will the Census Bureau cross-check any of this with community data or any other data, as this may be tied to funding?
Who would like to take this one?
Sure, I will take that. So thank you for your question. So no, we do not cross-check or validate anybody's response. It's all based on self-response. So we do not compare it to other data sources and change someone's response, for example. So we just code and tabulate what people indicate and what they write in and what they check. But we do not go and validate it in any way with any other data sources.
Thank you for your question. Operator, do we have our next caller?
Next caller is Margaret Lowry from IRDA, American Institute. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, Margaret. Margaret?
Margaret, your line might be muted.
Oh, hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for this. This is really extremely helpful to hear your responses and kind of walk through it together. I had a very similar question to Roz, and I think it's just kind of clarifying again how folks that identify as more than one category may be coded. And so it's two scenarios. One, what I'm hearing is that, say, if someone who is Sudanese checks MENA and writes in Sudanese, correct me if I'm wrong, they would then be coded as both under the Black or African American and then also under MENA because they've checked that. And then I wanted to see, I think the same would be if someone who is Egyptian but identifies as Black checks Black and then writes in Egyptian, again, they would get coded as Black or African American. But I wanted to check if some members of our community, it looks like on the code list, are not fully included. You guys heard it a million times, so I think you know what I'm good at. So if someone who is, say, Somali checks the MENA checkbox and then writes in Somali, is that answer then counted as both Black and MENA? Or would it just revert to Black? And then if that same person were to check Black and then just write in Somali, that would just be Black. Is that correct? Does that make any sense to you guys?
Yep, that makes sense.
Yes, so great question. Good to hear from you. So yeah, these are a lot of great reporting scenarios. You know, we right now really seeking feedback on their code list, but as Jessica and others have mentioned, that they haven't finalized all their editing procedures and tabulation procedures yet. We certainly will circle back when we do. But, you know, when you think about the code list that you have in front of you now, please keep in mind that it's based all on SPD 15, the definition of MENA, the definition of Hispanic, etc. What's great and what testing have shown on the combined question that we're planning to implement in the ACS and in the 2030 census allows for, you know, more than one. You can select MENA, write in Black, check Black. In the case of someone who's Egyptian, for example, as you mentioned, they is part of the MENA definition, right? So if they write in, check MENA, write in Egyptian, and check Black, they will be both Black and MENA, and it will be tabulated as such. And so, you know, these are good questions. Right now, our main focus right now is like the backbone of our data product, which is the code list. You have a great opportunity now to look at the code list that really serves as the background of all our data products, if you will, and the classification for SPD 15, not only, you know, for all the individual codes. So we're really looking forward to your feedback. So thank you so much for your question.
Yeah, and thank you. I understand that. I think I'm looking for ways to help our community find themselves in the code list and know how to check. So it's very helpful to hear that those scenarios.
Yeah, that's one that, you know, we're very, and yes, and testing have shown, especially members of the MENA community, they're finding themselves in the combined question. We have a separate response category there. And of course, all the individual boxes is there for all the major MENA groups. But if they don't, they can also write it in as well. So we're very excited about that. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you so much for your question and comment. And that will be our final question. If you have additional questions after today's event, please reach out to the Public Information Office at 301-763-3030 or email us at pio@census.gov. And as a reminder, you can find resources from today's webinar in the Race Ethnicity Coding Improvement Project Press Kit. I'd like to thank today's subject matter experts for taking part: Harari Rios Vargas, Jessica Pena, Roberta Ramirez, Rachel Marks, and Ali Cortez. And thank you for joining us. I'm Julie Iriando. Have a great rest of your day.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.
the way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.